Now, the devotees, may my homage be to the Supreme Buddha, Dhamma, and Ariyasacca. Now, I would like to respectfully invite 𝗙𝗺 to conduct the program today. Avasara 𝗙𝗺. Let's stand up from our seats and invite 𝗙𝗺.
Namabuddhaya, everyone. Before we start our Dhamma session, we will go for refuge and take the precepts. So everyone chant with me. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Sanghang saranang gacchāmi. Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchāmi. Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchāmi. Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchāmi. Tatiyampi buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchāmi. Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchāmi. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. To observe the 5 precepts, repeat after me. I observe the precept of abstaining from killing beings. I observe the precept of abstaining from stealing. I observe the precept of abstaining from sexual misconduct. I observe the precept of abstaining from telling lies. I observe the precept of abstaining from taking intoxicating drinks and drugs with the refuge of the noble triple gem. I observe these precepts for happiness in this life, for rebirth in heaven, to escape from the sufferings of samsara. May it help me and be a blessing. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, everyone. So today we're going to be doing our last and final session on Satipaṭṭhāna. So we've covered so far Kāyanupassana, Vedananupassana, Cittanupassana, and now we're on the final part of Dhammānupassanā, which is the Four Noble Truths. So the person who's actually developing this now, he's on the verge of becoming, on the verge of seeing the Four Noble Truths. So he's on the verge of becoming someone who realizes the Dhamma. So that's the final part of Dhammānupassanā, which is this person whose mindfulness has developed so much to the point that he can see the Four Noble Truths in his own life now. So right now what we do is we talk about the Four Noble Truths and we try to understand the Four Noble Truths, but it's not something we ourselves see in our own life. We agree with the concepts and we'll be talking about those concepts, but it's more of just an agreement and an understanding than actually seeing them. So in Dhammānupassanā, this person is actually seeing these concepts within himself and in his life. So in short, before I share screens, we should have an understanding that the Four Noble Truths are very, very special. These Four Noble Truths are what took the Buddha 4 uncountable eons and 100,000 eons to realize. This is what it means when someone says, this person has become a Supreme Buddha. He has realized the Four Noble Truths, and he's able to teach the Four Noble Truths to others. And he realizes this without a teacher. That's what it means by he is a Supreme Buddha. This is what he realized. Whatever knowledge he realized that makes him special, all that knowledge is contained within the Four Noble Truths. And these Four Noble Truths apply to everyone's life. No matter what the person is, no matter where they live, these Four Noble Truths can be seen in all of our lives. And these Four Noble Truths are obviously split into 4. The first one is dukkha. That means suffering. So there's a noble truth of suffering in our lives. And we'll go into detail what the Buddha explained, but in short, there's a suffering in our lives. And for example, birth. We're born and we have to suffer. We age and we have to suffer. We have to get sick and we suffer. We lose loved ones and loved things and we suffer. So in this way, there's suffering in our lives. And then the Buddha teaches there's a cause of this suffering. And that's the second noble truth. So the first one is suffering. The second one is that there's a cause for suffering. Then the Buddha teaches there's a third noble truth, which is there is an end to the suffering. There's a way to get rid of that suffering. So there's an end to that suffering. And then finally, the Buddha teaches the fourth noble truth, which is there is a path. There's a path that someone can take, that someone can practice, that someone can develop in order to get rid of that suffering. So those are the Four Noble Truths. Though that what's special there is that last part, which is the path. The path to getting rid of suffering is something only a Supreme Buddha teaches to the world. No one else, no matter who they are, no matter how much they contemplate by themselves, no one except a Supreme Buddha can realize that path. And that's what's special about these Four Noble Truths, that only a Supreme Buddha teaches this to the world, where he says these are the reasons why we have suffering. This is the end of suffering. This is how you get rid of suffering. So, and in this Mahasatipaṭṭhāna Sutta, the Supreme Buddha explains each of these noble truths in greater detail, and we can truly understand what a difficult battle we face when we learn this. So the first noble truth, like we discussed, can you guys see my screen? Is suffering. So the Buddha explains suffering in various ways. So one of the sufferings, or one of the forms of suffering we experience, is birth. And now these are just definitions that the Buddha gives. But the Buddha explains birth, whatever form it takes. So it says birth of beings in various orders of beings. So this really means wherever someone is born, whether in the heavenly world, whether in the Brahma world, whether in the human world, whether in the animal world, whatever form birth takes, whether it's descending into the womb, generation of specific birth. So again, whatever special state. So even in the animal world, someone can be born as a worm, versus someone is born as a lion, versus someone is born as a giraffe. So whatever specific birth there is, even in those worlds, the appearance of the aggregates. So remember we talked about the 5 aggregates of clinging. Those 5 are automatically there with birth. So no matter where someone goes, those 5 aggregates of clinging are there. And obtaining the senses, when someone obtains the 6 senses, or if he has a bad karma, he might obtain 3 or 4, or depending on the person. But somehow obtaining the senses, the 6 sense bases, that all is the definition of birth. So the Buddha puts birth into suffering. Why? Because as soon as someone is born, everything that's listed below is automatically inherited to that person. No matter where that person is, all of these things that we're going to discuss below are that person's inheritance. That's what that person has. He doesn't have anything else. So, for example, you guys all went to school, you guys all studied hard, and maybe you have a good job. Some people don't have a good job. But is it guaranteed that tomorrow you're going to have that same job? Can anyone here tell me tomorrow, I'm going to keep my job? I'm not going to get fired. Tomorrow, my house isn't going to collapse. Tomorrow, I'll have food to eat. Can anyone here say that for sure? Then along with birth, you didn't get a good job. Along with birth, you weren't guaranteed a good life. You weren't guaranteed a nice house. You weren't guaranteed a good family. But along with birth, you were guaranteed all these things we're going to talk about. And the second one is aging. When you were born, it was guaranteed 100% you were going to get old. That was a guarantee you got. That's something you inherited with birth. So that's the reason why birth is suffering. Why? Because with birth, you get every single form of suffering. Because if we weren't born, would we grow old? No. So then with birth, since we inherited aging, birth itself, being born, is suffering. And the Buddha gives the definition of aging as well. So what is aging? Aging is growing old in whatever world you're born. So you might think, well, devas don't age. But even the deva world, once they come to their last lifespan, they too experience forms of discomfort. So they start to sweat. They don't find happiness in the deva world anymore. Their color fades. And those are just some examples. So in every world, there is aging. Why? Because as soon as someone is born, their lifespan starts to decrease. It doesn't increase. It starts to decrease. So aging is there. Then the Buddha teaches brokenness of teeth, wrinkling of skin, grayness of hair, decline of life, weakness of the faculties. Those are all things associated with birth. As soon as you were born, you weren't given glasses. As soon as you were born, you didn't have to dye your hair. As soon as you were born, you didn't lose your teeth. All of those things happened as this body deteriorates. Because of birth, we grow old. Because of birth, we come closer and closer to death. Because of birth, our lifespan slowly decreases. So that aging itself is suffering. Does anyone here like any of these things listed here? Do you guys like losing your hearing? Do you guys like losing your eyesight? Do you guys like wanting to walk with a cane, in a wheelchair, in a sick bed? So all of these things are suffering. Then the Buddha explains death. Death itself is suffering. So here the Buddha again gives a definition for death, which is passing away from whatever world, passing away of beings from whatever world they're in. The dissolution, the disappearance, the dying, the completion of time, the breaking up of the aggregates. So here the Buddha is again talking about those 5 aggregates of clinging. Those break up and are again formed based on the karma that someone has created. Laying down the body, cutting off of the life path. These are all words used to describe death. In whatever form you can think, death is common to any being that is born. In whatever world, in whatever form they take, no matter what, if something is born, it will cease to be, it will die. That's common. And no one likes death. There are beings in hell, once they're born, when they're told that their lifespan is over, they get scared. And now hell is complete suffering. There's no happiness in hell. But when beings are told that they're going to pass away from that world, they cling to life so much that they get scared. They get sad. So understand death, in no matter what world it is in, no matter where you're born, death itself is suffering. And then the Buddha explains here soka, sorrow, and lamentation is two things. So really, there's no good English definitions for these, because English definitions we don't have enough words to explain these. So the Buddha explains sorrow as a state of extreme sadness beyond just our normal feeling, just a normal sadness we experience. Beyond that, something that stays with us, something that causes us to experience that sad feeling for a long time. And then the Buddha explains lamentation is something different, is a different form. So lamentation is someone crying. So when people die, you can often see at funerals, people say the other person's name and they cry. They lament, they cry out. They say, why did you leave me? Why did you abandon me? What about your children? Don't leave them behind. People cry like that. People beat their chest and cry. People faint. This is all under lamentation. So crying out, screaming, all of those things are a different kind of suffering. And the Buddha splits those two. Then the Buddha splits again here, dukkha or pain is the word that they translate in English. But here the word dukkha has the definition of bodily pain. So whatever bodily pain, bodily discomfort, whatever uncomfortable feeling born of bodily contact, all of those things are what we associate with pain. So even if you go to the doctor and have to get a needle injection, or you have to get some kind of surgery, all those painful feelings we experience, those are all part of bodily pain or dukkha. And then the Buddha explains there's another type of pain, which is domanassa. And here the word used is grief, but domanassa means mental pain. So we don't always just experience bodily pain, there's mental pain too. People get depression, people get mental disorders, people have, how do you call it? Like they suffer through like trauma. So sometimes their body is fine, but the trauma from an incident or from an accident that they have and that they experience mentally, no matter how many years pass, even if this body heals, every time they get a reminder of what they experience mental suffering. So all of these things are part of suffering, of that noble truth. These are all things we experience. When we experience bodily pain, we always experience mental pain. But sometimes we experience mental pain without a bodily pain. So both of these forms we experience in our life. And then the Buddha teaches there's another form of suffering called upayasa, which means this person has come to desperation, which means his state is so sad, is so low, that the sadness that arises from that state is a different kind of pain he experiences. So if you imagine, like, let's say tomorrow you lose your job. So then you think, okay, I'm going to go for job interviews. I'm going to do this. I'm going to apply for another job. And you think you still have options. But this state of despair or upayasa is something where this person has no options left. This person is hit rock bottom, really. This person has no other way to gain something. This person is completely lost. And that pain that person experiences at that state is a whole other kind of feeling. So do you guys know the story of Patachara? She was in the Buddha's time. She had 3 children, and on her way, I think, to a city, her husband gets struck by a snake and dies. And then as she tries to cross a river with her children, one of the small children gets picked up by another animal, by an eagle, and taken away. And as she tries to save that child, as she's crossing the river, the child that she's holding on to gets taken away by the river. So at that moment, she's in a complete state of despair. Why? Because no matter where she looks, she doesn't find a solution. She's at complete rock bottom. So much so that she ends up losing her mindfulness. She ends up losing her mindfulness because of the trauma she experiences. So a state of despair or upayasa is it's a whole different form of pain that we experience. And then the Buddha teaches having to deal with things we dislike. And here that means anything that we see that we dislike. So am I going to a kitchen and seeing it messy, seeing garbage near your house, smelling bad things, hearing bad things. So hearing people yell at you, say bad things about you, having to deal with things, even at a restaurant, things, maybe you order food and your food isn't tasty. We still have to, now you already paid for it. So in whatever simple form this takes, or whatever powerful form this takes, having to deal with forms, with sounds, with smells, with taste, with tangibles, and thoughts that are unpleasing, that someone dislikes, that's all part of suffering. And we have to do that, whether we like it or not. We have to deal with these things. And having to deal with people, with those who don't want you to become better. They want you to end up ruining yourself. They want you to become worse. They don't want your comfort. They want your discomfort. And they want you to suffer. So there's people in our lives. Not everyone in our life wants us to become the best that we can be. There are some people in our life who dislike us, who want us to become worse, who want us to become sad, who want us to suffer. Having to deal with those people is also a part of suffering, dealing with things we dislike, whether it's things or whether it's people. And then the Supreme Buddha teaches having to separate ourselves from things that are pleasing. So this is the opposite of this one, union with what is displeasing. So having to split apart from seeing forms that we like. So for example, our children, our form is a form that we like. It's a sound that we like. Having to split apart from that form is a part of suffering. Some people say, as a simple example, after people binge watch a TV show, they say they feel sad. And they ask, why do I feel sad after I watch a series and it ends? Why? That pleasant form is gone now. It's over. So they experience an emptiness. So that's a very, very simple example. But whatever way this takes, whatever way that we have forms, sounds, smells, taste, tangibles, and mental objects or thoughts in our life that we like, that we desire, that we want, when we don't get those things, having to lose those things, that's all part of suffering. And losing people in our life who want us to become better, who want us to be happy, who want us to be well, our mother, our father, our brother, sister, older kinsmen, younger kinsmen, friends, colleagues, family members, and relatives, all of those people, when we lose them, we experience suffering. Those are all sadness, all part of the noble truth of suffering. And then you can see how the Buddhist, like you can see is like, would we have the knowledge to split these sufferings into this way? You would just say, suffering, yeah, we have suffering in our life. Everyone knows suffering. But the Buddha says these are different kinds. These are different forms of suffering that we all experience. He doesn't just group it into one. He shows in detail these are different forms that people experience. And then the Buddha teaches not getting what people like is suffering. So now you guys heard all this entire list, or the things at the top, and you might think, wow, I don't want to be born. Wow, I don't want to get sick. I don't want to grow old. I don't want to die. I don't want these kinds of suffering. I don't want to lose loved ones. But whether you want that or not, you're not going to get it. Whether you don't want your hair to turn white or not, your hair is going to turn white. Whether you don't want your teeth to fall out or not, your teeth are going to fall out. Whether you don't want your children to die or not, your children are one day going to pass away. Whether you don't want your family members to die or not, they're also going to pass away. So not getting what we wish for is also suffering. That's part of sadness. And then the Buddha teaches, if you were to combine all of these forms of suffering and you were to say it in one sentence, if you were to put all this together and say it in short form, then you can say the 5 aggregates of clinging is suffering. So that's form, feeling, perception. This is a perception here. Perception. Intention, consciousness, all of these aggregates of clinging are suffering. So if you were to give a definition of suffering, this is the definition you can give. If you were to say it in one sentence, the 5 aggregates of clinging are suffering. So this, the Buddha teaches, all of these forms of suffering are under the noble truth of suffering, of dukkha ariyasacca. So this is something we all have in our lives. Then the Buddha teaches the second noble truth, which is, what's the reason we have this kind of suffering? What's the reason we experience this? Now, here we said, for someone who's born, he has to go, all of these other forms of suffering are inherited to him. He has to deal with all these things because he's born. But then what's the reason we have birth in the first place? And now is when our knowledge of dependent origination helps us. So the Buddha teaches the reason for suffering, the reason that we experience suffering, is because of craving. So it is the craving that causes us to be born again, and is accompanied by delight and lust, and finding delight in things that we have now, in sensual pleasures, and he splits it into 3 things. So craving for sensual pleasures, craving for existence, and craving for non-existence. So those are 3 types of cravings we have in our life that causes us to be born. Now, I'll give a simpler example. Right now, at this very moment, someone in Africa or China or America has just died. They just died. But none of you guys are crying. What's the reason you guys aren't sad? What's the difference here? The reason we're not sad at this moment is because we don't know that person. We have no attachment to that person. You might, if you read the news, you might find out, oh, some people have just died from flooding. Some people have just died from a natural disaster. But we don't experience sadness. We just think, well, that's a bad thing that happened. But it's not the same as when we find out someone who is close to us passes away. So the reason there's a difference there is, when we find out someone close to us has passed away, we have an attachment to that person. That person is someone we have craving for. That person is someone who's pleasing to us. So when that person passes away, we experience suffering. But it's not the person's fault. It's not the fact that that person died. That's not why we experience sadness. Because then if someone else dies, we should also feel sad. The reason is the attachment we have there, or the craving we have there, because of that reason, is the reason we suffer. So if we didn't have attachment to that person and that person passed away, then we wouldn't feel sad. So take another, imagine you guys are using a phone or a laptop right now to watch this program. Imagine I take your computer and I smash it. Then what happens? Then you experience sadness. But if I were to go to the house next to you and break the same computer, you guys wouldn't care. Why? Because when I break your laptop or your phone, you guys think, that's my laptop, that's my phone. So our association, our attachment to things and people, that craving is the reason why we suffer. And the Buddha explains those in 3 ways. So sensual, craving for sensual pleasures. That means craving for things we like to see, craving for sounds, craving for smells, craving for taste, craving for tangibles, and craving for mental objects. And then craving for existence. That means there's a craving within us that we want to be born again. Like, for example, sometimes we tell people, when you attain nibbana, when you become enlightened, you're not born again. You cease to be born. And then they think, oh, I don't want to do that. I want to be born again. Why would I not want to be born? So to them, the concept of the concept of dying or not existing is something sad to them. So that's something they can't understand. So there's a craving within us that we want to be born again. And then the final type of craving for non-existence, is something that usually we don't experience, but it's still there. That means there's another idea deep within us, which doesn't really come forth all the time, that we don't want to be born. We want to not be born. And there's a craving for that as well. So these three forms of craving that we have within us is the reason that we're born. So if someone was to get rid of these types of cravings, to get rid of all these cravings, then they would cease to be born. And as soon as they cease to be born, what happens? All these forms of suffering that are inherited at birth, all of those disappear. So then the Buddha explains, then the Buddha asks the monks, then monks, where does this craving arise? So that means, where does this craving come from? And this is the part that's very, very, the part that really shows us what kind of problem we're in. So the Buddha teaches, whatever in the world has a pleasant and agreeable nature, that's where this craving arises. So whatever is pleasant to us, whatever are things that we like, that's where craving arises. And then look at the list of places where craving arises. Now, we're just talking about this, but you guys should just have an understanding that really we're in a battle where we can't really understand how to get out of this if it wasn't for a Supreme Buddha. So what are things that has a pleasant and agreeable nature? Your six senses, your eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. And then the things that we see from those senses, form, sound, smells, taste, tangibles, mental objects. The consciousness that arises in those six senses are things that we have craving for, are things that are pleasant to us. So whether you think my eye consciousness is really nice today, my ear consciousness is pretty good today, you don't have to think that, but deep down, it's pleasant to us. Whether we say that in words or whether we think that, deep down, we have an idea that this consciousness is something good. And then the contact that occurs. So for example, when we see a form with our eyes, and then eye consciousness arises, so the eye, the form, and eye consciousness coming together, we said is called eye contact. That contact itself is pleasant to us. So that contact that's occurring, whether through eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, or the mind, all those forms of contact is also pleasant to us. And we don't want to lose that contact. We like that contact. And then the feelings that arise from that contact. So let's say you see, let's say another simple example, you're watching a show and you feel happy, you feel a good feeling. That feeling is also something that we like. Then the feelings born through all of these forms of contact, those are all things we like. Then the perception, being able to perceive a form, being able to say, hey, that's round, that's blue, that's green. That concept itself is something we like. And no one says that, right? Do we ever say that? I like perceiving things. That's my favorite thing to do. We don't say that, but deep within us, that idea, that concept or that ability we have is something we have craving for. Then the intentions we create. So the intentions we have to do things. So the intention you have when you move around in your chair, to blink, to stand up, the intention you have behind it, the intention itself is something we like, is something that's pleasant to us. So the craving itself we have for forms and sounds is something we crave for. So just this seems like a concept that's hard to understand, but the craving we have itself is something we crave for, if that makes sense. And then our ability to think about thoughts of things we see, thoughts of things we hear, thoughts of things we smell, taste, and touch, And thoughts of thoughts themselves, all of those thoughts are things we like. We want to be able to think. Having thoughts appear in our mind is something we like. And then thinking those thoughts over and over again is what is meant by examination here. So thinking thoughts over and over again of forms, of sounds, of smells, of tastes, of tangible, those are all things we like. So this is something just way beyond just watching or listening to a song, okay? So let's say, we'll take an example. Let's say you guys hear a nice song and you think that's a good song. Then what do? You move your mouse and you click save, let's say, or you click on your phone and you click save to playlist. The intention behind clicking that button is something we crave for. The thought that comes to our mind that says we should save this, that's something we crave for. The rethinking, I'm going to listen to this tomorrow, that thought itself is something we crave for. The ear at that moment, the sound at that moment, the consciousness that arose in our ear at that moment is something we crave for. Those three things coming together and creating ear contact, that contact itself is something we crave for. And then the feelings that arose through that contact is something we crave for. And then the perception we had at that moment, whether we knew, okay, hey, this is a male singing this song, a female singing this song, that perception we had itself is something we crave for. And then the intention we had there is something we crave for. And then that craving we had at that moment, that craving itself is something we crave for. So just understand how unimaginable are the forms that craving arises. In all of these places, there's craving. In whatever, when you have a thought, there's craving. When you rethink a thought, there's craving. When you have contact, there's craving. So think about how much places or how many ways, really at every single moment, craving is arising. So think about the idea that this is what we have to get rid of. This is the problem. So the problem is everywhere we go, everywhere we look, whatever we can try to grasp, there's craving arising. Does this make sense? So this is where craving arises. This is what the Buddha teaches, as these are the places that craving arises. Now we said at the beginning, the person who's practicing this part of Dhammānupassanā is seeing dukkha. He's seeing this noble truth. He's seeing the noble truth of the origin of suffering. He's seeing with mindfulness craving that's arising. So just think how powerful his mindfulness is now. He's seeing this. He's seeing, okay, craving is arising for this form. Craving is arising for eye consciousness. Craving is arising for eye contact. Craving is arising from those feelings. Craving is arising from those perceptions, from those intentions. From craving itself, craving is arising. From thoughts, from examination or rethinking thoughts over and over again, craving is arising. He's seeing this now. So this is something that's really, unless someone practically does this, this is beyond our understanding. This is something this person is able to do practically once he gets to this step. But is there any questions on this part? If someone is confused here. Helga, you understand this part? Mahinder? Okay, then I'm going to continue. So then the Buddha teaches, so this is where craving arises. So then the Buddha asks, then how does someone cease cravings? Where is the end of suffering then? And here the Buddha teaches the dukkha nirodha Ariyasacca, which means the Buddha teaches if someone is able to get rid of that craving. So we said craving is the reason for suffering. Then if someone is able to get rid of that craving, if someone is able to relinquish that craving, liberate themselves from it or detach themselves from it, then that person has gotten rid of suffering. So if the problem is craving, if someone gets rid of craving, then they solve the problem. Does that make sense? So if craving is the root cause of suffering, all someone has to do is get rid of craving. Now that's very, very easy to say. All you have to do is get rid of craving. And you're done. Then your problem is solved. Easy, right? It's not easy. It's very, very hard. Why? Because look at all the places that craving arises. So the Buddha teaches, so if someone is able to abandon this craving, able to relinquish it, able to free themselves from it, then where does it end up not existing anymore? Where does it cease? And then the answer is, so these are all the places that craving arises, and those are the same places that craving should cease from. So what happens, this person who's gotten rid of craving, he no longer has craving for the eye, for the ear, for the nose, for the tongue, for the body, for the mind. He no longer has craving for forms, sounds, smells, taste, tangibles, mental objects. He no longer has craving for eye consciousness, for eye contact, for those feelings that arise through eye contact, for perception of forms, sounds, smells, taste, tangibles, whatever perception there is, he no longer has craving for it. He no longer has a desire to perceive things. He no longer has a craving to have an intention about things. He doesn't have that desire. He doesn't have a desire to crave for things. So he has no craving to crave for things. He no longer has craving to think of thoughts. So right now we sit down and sometimes people daydream. Sometimes people enjoy that. There's an enjoyment there. But he no longer has a craving for that. He doesn't think, I want to think something. He no longer has any craving or any desire to rethink thoughts anymore, to think thoughts over and over again. So whatever form of craving that is there, he's gotten rid of all of that in his life. And he's seeing that. He's seeing that with mindfulness. And then so we said, all someone has to do is get rid of all the places that craving arises. And that's easy to say, but the Buddha teaches as the final noble truth. Then how do we do that? And the Buddha, thankfully, out of compassion, taught us a path to get rid of suffering, taught us a path to get rid of, you can say this in another way, the noble truth of the path to the cessation of craving, to the path to the cessation of birth, aging, sickness, death, the path to getting rid of suffering. So whatever, you can put multiple words here, those are all the same. The path to get rid of craving, the path to get rid of birth, the path to get rid of suffering. And this path has a name, which is the Noble Eightfold Path. So if someone practices the Noble Eightfold Path, they're practicing the path to never lose their teeth again, to never have white hair again, to never have to walk with a cane again, to never have to die again, to never have to lose their mother and father again, to never have to lose their loved ones again, to never have to deal with people they dislike at work, to never have to deal with things that they dislike, with heat, with hunger, with cold, with flies, with snakes, with mosquitoes. All of these things, they get rid of if someone completes this Noble Eightfold Path. So that's what we have to do. If someone wants to get rid of suffering, then there is only this path, which is the Noble Eightfold Path. And what is the Noble Eightfold Path? Obviously, 8 things. Not 9, 8. That's why it's eightfold. And what are those 8? Right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. So what is right view? Now, the Supreme Buddha explains these much more in detail in different suttas, but in the Satipaṭṭhāna Sutta, it's explained very briefly. And this is talking about the Noble Eightfold Path is split into 2, okay? There's the part that a normal person can practice. That means someone who hasn't even reached the first stage of enlightenment, who hasn't become Sotapanna, which is all of us. So there's that path, which is called worldly right view, worldly right intention, worldly right speech, So this is normal. This is a normal part. The normal part itself is what we're practicing. Then there's the world transcending, or we say 𝗏𝗪𝗂𝗏 and then 𝗏𝗪𝗂𝗏. 𝗏𝗪𝗂𝗏 means worldly. A normal person can practice this part. And then 𝗏𝗪𝗂𝗏 means this is the part that someone who's reached the first stage of enlightenment can practice. So this path where who's developing the Noble Eightfold Path is for someone who's reached at least the first stage of enlightenment. For him, right view develops, right intention develops, right speech develops, right action develops. So right view is explained here as the knowledge of the Four Noble Truths. So someone who's become at least Sotapan or stream enter, his knowledge of the Four Noble Truths develops. His right intention. So not having hatred, not having cruelty, being able to let go of things, that intention develops within him as a way to get rid of suffering, okay? So I'll explain this again. So for right now, we have right view. What we're doing is we're practicing worldly right view. And worldly right view is tenfold. So worldly right view means, and we discussed this before, someone thinks if someone offers dana or gives things, there's a good result of that. Someone believes that. That's part of worldly right view. Someone believes there is a result of offering things to Bodhi trees, to stupas, to the Buddha. So there's a result of offerings. So if someone takes a flower and offers it to the Buddha, there's a result of that. There's a result of helping others. There's a result of services. If you open the door for someone, there's a result for that. If you help someone move a box, there's a result for that. So that's the first three. There's a result of giving. There's a result of offerings. There's a result of services. Then he believes, if I do good things, good results will come to me. If I do bad things, bad results will come to me. So he believes in karma. Then he believes there's a this world. That means he believes, so these two go together. There's a this world and there's a next world. That's 5 and 6. So he believes after death he is reborn. And he came to this world from a different place. So he believes in rebirth. That's what that this world and next world means. So that's 5 and 6. And then he believes mother is someone special. Father is someone special. So if someone kills their mother, guaranteed no one can save you. Your next birth is in hell for an eon. If you kill your father, guaranteed next birth you go to hell, no matter how much merit you have done. So mother and father are someone special. And then he believes in spontaneously born beings. That means he believes that there are some beings who are born without mother and father. For example, in the Deva worlds, in the Brahma worlds, in hell, in the ghost world, beings are born there based on their karma. They don't have to stay in the womb for 9 months. They're born there spontaneously. So he believes in that. And then finally, the last one is he believes there are beings, there are people who with their own knowledge, with their own effort, realized these truths and taught it to the world. So he believes in Supreme Buddhas, in private Buddhas or Pacceka Buddhas. He believes in enlightened ones. That's the view that we're struggling so hard to come to, which is worldly right view, those 10. So if someone doesn't believe in any of those 10, then that's called wrong view. So right view is what we try to develop. Someone who has that right view is someone who can come to this right view, which is world transcending right view, or 𝗏𝗪𝗂𝗏 right view, which is the knowledge of the Four Noble Truths. That's a lot of information to grasp, I understand. But just understand this path develops for someone who's reached the first stage of enlightenment. And what we're doing is we're trying to reach the first stage of enlightenment. So our path is like a shadow of this path. We're trying to develop these, but it doesn't mean the path itself is developing, okay? There's a difference there. Does that make sense? So we're just practicing, we're doing an imitation of this path, really. But that is what we have to do in order to come to this path. Just like we're running on the treadmill before we run a marathon. So what we're doing, we're running on the treadmill right now. We're copying this. We're doing it, but then if someone becomes a stream mentor, then they start developing this path. So I hope that made sense. If you have questions, you can ask after. But so then his right speech also develops. And what does he do? He abstains from lying, from divisive, from harsh, from empty speech. So lying, divisive means speech that's used to split others. So if I was to say, hey, Mahendra, Helga said you're a bad person, then what am I doing? I'm trying to split you guys. Does it make sense? Or if I was to say the other way, Helga, Mahendra said you're not a good person, then what am I doing? I'm again trying to get you guys upset, trying to get you guys to fight. So in whatever way I try to split others, that's called divisive speech. And then harsh speech doesn't have to be just swear words. Whatever speech that someone uses to make someone feel bad, feel someone hurt, to make someone feel sad, all of those count as harsh speech. And then empty speech is, this is probably the hardest one for someone in daily life, which is talking about useless things. And then I'm not going to explain all the useless things here, but the Buddha teaches there's many 32 ways that someone can talk about unimportant things, really. So talking about politics, talking about war, talking about there's a long list, but talking about things that don't help someone, really. So take it as that, a very simple example. So if someone is a politician here, you can talk about your job, that's fine, because you have to live. But here it means he talks senselessly. He's talking about things that don't have any impact. Okay. And then right action is this person keeps those for the precepts of not killing, not stealing, and not committing sexual misconduct. And then right livelihood is here explained as he abandons whatever way there is to earn a living by doing bad things. He refrains from those things. So he doesn't sell poisons, weapons, or alcohol. He doesn't take bribes. He doesn't give bribes. Whatever ways that we have in our society say that's a bad way to live, he doesn't practice any of those. So he doesn't sell drugs. Whatever form there is, he doesn't do any of these. And then right effort means he abandons defilements and he develops good qualities. And we explain this as 4 stages. He abandons defilements that's arisen. He stops new ones from forming. He creates a wholesome quality in his mind, and then he develops it. So that's right effort. And then his right mindfulness starts to develop. What is the right mindfulness? What we've been talking about for the past 3 months is Kaya-nupassana, contemplation of body and body, is Vedana-nupassana, feelings and feeling, Chitta-nupassana, mind and mind, and Dhammānupassanā, phenomena and phenomena. And he does this, and this is the very most important part. He develops the 4 foundations of mindfulness after having put away greed and conflicts for the world. This is the most important part, which is he practices Satipaṭṭhāna after putting away greed and conflicts for the world. That means whatever strong desire someone has, he has to get rid of those first. And whatever strong anger or ill will he has to get rid of those first. So in short, this means only a good person, only a person with good qualities can practice Satipaṭṭhāna. If he wants to actually practice Satipaṭṭhāna, he has to have guna dharma, or we say good qualities first. That's the requirement to practice this. So someone who's a good person can develop this. That's why 𝗏𝗏datta doesn't have any of this. 𝗏𝗏datta, even though he's a monk, even though he's the Buddha's cousin, even though he ordained as one of the first, not one of the first, but like one of the few in the very early times, even though he was there, he didn't put away greed and conflicts for the world. He wasn't a good person. So no matter how much he tries to practice this path will never develop. Satipaṭṭhāna will never develop within him. But he's a bad person in very simple terms. So for someone who practices Satipaṭṭhāna, our goal should be, now you guys see a path here. Our goal should be, okay, I have to practice this path. I need to get rid of suffering. So I have to practice these 8. And as he practices these 8, he has to become a good person first. So when he practices these, doesn't he become a good person? He no longer lies. He no longer tells words that make others mad at each other. He no longer makes others feel bad. He no longer talks about useless things. He abstains from killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. He abandons things that people say are bad. He doesn't take bribes. He doesn't sell poisons. He doesn't sell drugs. He's becoming a good person. Then he's able to develop his mindfulness. Why? After he's become a good person, he's able to practice developing mindfulness. And as he does that, he's able to achieve Samma Samadhi, or right concentration. And the Buddha explains this as here, the dhyana, the 4 dhyanas, the first, second, third, and fourth dhyanas. So there's a path here, and that path has steps. One of the first steps is to become a good person, someone who gives, someone who helps others, someone who's kind, compassionate. Those are the qualities of someone who's good, who's kind. Then that person is the person who's able to develop his mindfulness in a way that leads him to an end of suffering. Okay? So that's what the Buddha teaches here. Does anyone have any questions on this part? Everyone understands? Then the Buddha teaches, if someone was to develop these 4 foundations of mindfulness, this is the very end of the sutta, in such a way for 7 years, only 2 things could be expected. That means only 2 results will be there. Either he becomes an arahant in this very life, or if he has any fetters left, any things that make him cling to this world, or to existence, to being born, he becomes anagami, which means he goes to the Brahma worlds and then he attains Nibbana there. If he practices for 7 years. And then the Buddha teaches, forget 7 years. If someone was to develop this for 6 years, or 5 years, 4, 3, 2, 1, for 7 months, for 6 months, for 5 months, all the way down to 7 days. If someone was to practice the 4 foundations of mindfulness in this way for 7 days, only 2 results will be there, which is either you become an arahant, or if you get rid of, if you still have some kind of attachment to existence, then you become anagami. And that's the end of Satipaṭṭhāna Sutta. So this seems pretty easy, right? You just got to do this for 7 days. That's pretty easy, right? You just gotta, 7 days, you gotta be mindful. That seems doable, right? Mahendra, you can do this for 7 days? Rooney, you can do this for 7 days straight? It's just 1 week. Just take 1 week off from work and just practice this for 7 days, and then you're done. So I understand, even though it's just 7 days, we can't even develop mindfulness for like 2 minutes. So let alone 7 days, it'll maybe not even 7 years. Even if we did this for 7 years, we won't reach the step. But that's not the problem. Our problem should be, no matter how long it takes, I'm gonna consistently try. Someone has that goal in mind, then little by little they'll develop. So there are some monks, there's some monks who for 30 years they practice developing asubha, and they didn't see a single result. They didn't see a single moment of samadhi. They didn't have anything, but they continually practiced for 30 years. But at the end, there was a result. They were able to get an understanding of that life, and they were able to achieve enlightenment. So your effort doesn't go to waste as long as there's effort. But if there's no effort, then yeah, you just have knowledge, and that knowledge won't help you in any way. So the best thing to do is, even if it's little by little, practice. So maybe you can practice for 2 minutes or 3 minutes. even just in the entire day. So don't think this week is gonna be my week. I'm gonna do this straight for 7 days. That's not gonna happen, okay? You can try, but you gotta be realistic. So just try your best. That's what's important. Whatever you're able to do, you develop. And as you develop your mindfulness, it'll get more powerful. And then it'll become easier. That's what you guys should do as you develop Satipaṭṭhāna, okay? But don't forget the requirements to practice is to first become a good person. That means having good qualities. That means you have a desire to help others. You like to give. You like to be kind to others. You don't lie. You don't steal. You don't do bad things. That's the foundation to practice the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Understand? So does anyone have any questions? Because that's the last lesson on Satipaṭṭhāna. Any questions? So in that Dhammānupassanā, that last portion, this person is seeing those 4 noble truths through mindfulness. So this person is at the very, very end stage. His mindfulness is so powerful, he's seeing all that. Mind, do you have any questions? So you guys can explain the 4 foundations of mindfulness to me now?
Bhante,
Yes.
is the population of the living being is constant because the population of human is increasing. So is it some other living beings are born as human now? Like the cycle of samsara, like if we believe in a rebirth, then
yes.
Why the population of human is increasing? Is it coming from somewhere else or like something like that?
So can you tell me the population of animals in the ocean?
No, I have no idea.
Is it bigger or less than the number of beings in the human world?
I think it should be bigger because the
Not a
water.
bit bigger. It's, you can't even tell me how much bigger. It's like billion times bigger. The amount of living beings in just the ocean is far greater than the number of humans that exist. In 1 year, the US alone kills more chickens than there are humans in the world. Just understand that for a second. In a single year, people for food kill more chickens than there are humans in the world. It's like 8.2 billion or 8.1 billion chickens are killed every year for food. We don't have that many humans, right? So the amount of beings in samsara is we don't have any understanding. The amount of beings in hell, the amount of beings in the ghost world, the amount of beings in the animal world. Just the animal world alone, the world we can see, is far beyond our imagining. So the Buddha explains, if you take some dirt onto your fingernail, the amount of people that after they die from the human world, that are reborn in the human world, is like the amount of dirt on your fingernail. But the amount of beings that after they die from the human world or pass away from the human world are reborn in a bad destination, either in hell, the animal world, or the ghost world, is just like this great earth. So right now you're on top of the fingernail. Your goal is to get on the top of the fingernail again. And the chances of that is you have to multiply them, right? Fingernail times fingernail. So it's very, very low. So our goal should be to practice good qualities, collect merit, and then first create a protection for ourselves, which is we should go to a good destination to practice the Dhamma. And that protection comes through practicing the Dhamma. And you don't have to do something extra. When you practice the Dhamma, that protection will be there. You will get that protection. It's not something it's not something that you have to do like as an extra job or something. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. And then someone asked, what about craving for mindfulness or enlightenment? If you get to the highest absorption and are still craving enlightenment, how could you reach enlightenment? So there are sometimes, the Buddha teaches, there are some types of forms of craving that help us. So craving to abandon lust is a good type of craving, the Buddha teaches. That's something that helps us to create effort. But your question is a bit different, because if someone gets to the, let's say someone is able to get to jhana states and he craves for that, then he's gonna stop there. That's like a wall for him. If he craves for that samadhi, then that's a craving that will lead him to rebirth. That will lead him to rebirth in the Brahma worlds or the formless worlds. But someone having a desire to reach enlightenment is a desire that will help him, because that helps him to practice the Dhamma. And at the end of that, like we talked about last week, he has to, once he solved the problem, he lets go of the Dhamma as well. So don't think, this is like very, very end stage stuff. So first become a good person and slowly develop our mindfulness. And then someone says, okay, that's already asked. Another question, I'm not sure. Someone said, they're not ready to give up drinking wine. Is it okay to take only 4 precepts? Sure, take 4 precepts. But understand that one day, if you want to end suffering, you will have to take the 5th precept. That's the only answer. You're like, good, take the 4, keep the 4 precepts. That's very good. That will guaranteed help you. That will create merit for you. But as long as that 5th is not there, you won't reach Nibbana. So that's okay though. There's sometimes in the Buddhist dispensation, this person's a hunter. This person killed, and that's what he did for a living. And one of his friends says, don't kill anymore, man. You got to give up that. And he says, I can't give up killing. I need to live. And then his friend says, then just stop for half a day. That means throughout your day, pick either the night or daytime and give up killing. So this person says, okay, at night, I won't kill anymore then. So he hunts only during the day. And then as a result of that, when he's born in the ghost world, but as a result of that, during the nighttime, he experiences divine happiness. There's like, he has a mansion, he has good food to eat, he has nice clothes. But during the daytime, dogs come and eat his flesh. So as a result of practicing non-killing during the nighttime, he gets a happy result. But as a result of practicing killing during the daytime, he gets a bad result. So my advice is, don't get attached to a small happiness when a bigger happiness awaits us. And really I want to remind you guys, in I think it was in America or another foreign country, there was an experiment done, okay? And what happened was the scientists and the doctors wanted to figure out how small children thought. So young 5, 6-year-olds, they wanted to understand, do these children think the same way as adults do? So what they would do is with their parents' permission, they would take the children and they would put them into a small room and have a table in front of them. And then they would put a small piece of chocolate on the table, or a marshmallow, or some kind of candy. They would leave that one chocolate piece or that one marshmallow there, and they would say, son, if you don't eat that for 30 seconds, we're going to give you 100 pieces of chocolate, but you just got to wait 30 seconds. Or if you don't eat this for a minute, if you don't eat that marshmallow, don't touch that marshmallow for 1 minute, and we'll give you 10 pieces. And then they put all of these children in the same situation. And what do you think the children did? The small children, most of them, they would eat the marshmallow. Only a few would refrain and not eat the marshmallow, and then they would actually get 10 more or 100 more. So what happened? Scientists found out that children, they want the results at that moment. So they don't understand in the future, oh, I can get a better result. So that moment, the happiness they get is far more important to them than a future happiness. But our life is the exact same way. So you might get some small happiness from drinking wine, maybe some small happiness from not remembering your problems for that moment. But that small happiness is just like that one marshmallow. By letting go of that small happiness in this life, you could get 100 marshmallows in the next life. But not marshmallows, but really way, way better result than that. So you just have to get rid of the small happiness you experience. You only live on this earth for how many years? You live the first 15, 20 years is done through school. You just went to school. And then the next 10 years, you have maybe, oh, you look good. You have good friends. You have a nice job. And then after that, it's all downhill. After you reach 28, 29, then you grow old. Your beauty fades. You start looking worse and worse. Then you have to buy hair dye. Then you have to do all kinds of things to make yourself look better, and all you have is sadness. Your children end up crying, and then you have to go wake up and then take care of them. Your children get sick. If they're late for 1 hour, you get worried. Your whole life is just sadness. So really, that small amount of time we have left is not worth the unimaginable happiness we can experience in the future lives. So my advice to you is, good, keep the 4 precepts. But if one day you can abandon that last one and keep that last precept, you will experience happiness far more than that glass of wine. Whoever that asked that, I hope that answers your question. Someone asked, 𝗙 why are there no arahants nowadays? The same reason why all they have to do is practice this for 7 days and you be an arahant, and then you can prove me wrong. Just practice Satipaṭṭhāna for 7 days straight, and then you can be the first arahant. Okay? So the reason is, who's doing this for 7 days straight? Okay? It's very, very difficult. We have to, again, like I reminded last week, doesn't matter how many, okay, let's say there are, okay, imagine I answer your question, everyone in this world is an arahant, except you. Is your problem solved? No. Because whether there's arahants or not in the world doesn't help us in any way. When you give a dana, you should think, I'm giving to arahants, whether they're there or not. You get the same merit. Whether the Buddha is here or not, if you think I'm giving to the living Buddha, I'm offering this flower to the Buddha that's alive, you get the same merit, whether the Buddha is here or not. But then, even if there's arahants or not, it doesn't help us to gain more merit. It doesn't help us to develop the path. Everyone teaches the Buddha's Dhamma. If there's an arahant, you would still learn the same teaching. You still have to practice this for 7 days. The arahant is not going to come and touch your head and you'll be like, hey, you're good to go now. So you can think there's arahants, you can think there's not arahant. It doesn't make a difference. All you have to do is practice the Dhamma. And someone asked, in the Noble Eightfold Path, is it only world transcending right view that we can't follow? We are not stream enter. All the other 7 steps can someone practice? So when someone comes into the path, he doesn't tell lies anymore. He doesn't say bad, he doesn't make others feel bad anymore. Like it doesn't happen. Right now, we're refraining from them. So we refrain from killing, we refrain from stealing. But someone who's entered the path, it doesn't happen anymore. So he's completely abandoned it. Does that make sense? So it's a difference there. Right now, we're refraining for it. That's why I said we're practicing like the mock version or the shadow of it. But it is by practicing that way that someone can end up going to world. So all those 7 steps, we're not practicing yet. We're trying to practice. And then someone says, why is it so difficult to practice the Noble Eightfold Path since we are still in the samsara? Why is it so difficult to practice the Noble Eightfold Path? Because our qualities are low nowadays. So in the first 20 years of the Buddha's dispensation, after the Buddha became enlightened, there was no precepts for monks. So the Buddha didn't say you can't eat after 12, you can't kill, don't don't behave badly. There's no precepts for 20 years. And then after that, he has to start laying down the precepts for the monks. So within 20 years, the Buddha's dispensation started to deteriorate. Now we're 2,600 years away from that. But within the first 20 years, if it started to decline, then what are like, just understand we're way farther from that time than like imagine our qualities. Our qualities are way worse. That's why it's difficult. And practicing the Noble Eightfold Path, like practicing the Noble Eightfold Path is practicing the Dhamma. The difference between practicing the Dhamma and something else is you can't ask external people to help you. So in other religions, you can say, help me do this, help me do that. But this is something you have to do by yourself. You have to keep examining your own mind. You have to keep thinking about the way you're thinking things. And the practice is completely based on your effort, your mindfulness. So it's not something anyone else can help you with. Does that make sense? So practicing the Dhamma is hard because you have to do it by yourself. No one can say, okay, do this now, do this step now. You have to see it within yourself and practice. And it's hard to develop good qualities because we have so much greed nowadays. And then someone asked, I hope that answers your question. Someone asked, if someone breaks the first precept and kills a person out of protection, does someone break the first precept if someone kills a person out of protection? So if someone comes to attack us and we kill, does it break our precept? If the intention to kill is there, yes. If the intention to not kill is there, then no. That means, let's say someone's coming to attack us, and to break free from that person, we push him, but we don't have an intention to kill, and that person ends up tripping and falling and dying, then no, we don't break the first precept. But if that person is coming to attack us and we take out a gun and shoot that person, then yes, the first precept breaks. Why? Because the intention to kill is there. Okay, so the reason is not what breaks the precept. The intention is what breaks the precept. And the Buddha's teaching is, even if some thieves have captured you and are sawing you limb by limb, you shouldn't get angry. You should develop loving kindness. So that answer pretty much gets rid of any doubt someone might have, whether is it okay to kill for someone's own benefit or own protection, right? And that sutta is found in 𝗪𝗪 Sutta in Majjhima Nikaya, where he says that. Then someone asks, Bhante, which medicine do you encourage, Ayurvedic or laboratory medicine? Whatever helps you get better, do that. Whether it's Ayurvedic medicine or laboratory medicine, whatever cures your illness, do it. I don't have a preference. I don't know what to tell you any more than that. Whatever helps get rid of your illness to make you well, practice that or do that. That's based on your own normal wisdom, based on your own research. Yeah. So I hope that answers your question. Does anyone have any other questions? Someone said, on my terrace there are spider gnats and flies. Spider hats? Gnats. And flies and other bugs fly in them and die. When I hear or see that a bug is trapped in it and try to escape, I help them. I thought that is a good action till I started thinking about that with my action, I took away the food of spiders. So now my mind is confused if I do the right thing to help. So that's a good question. I had this question too before I ordained. My question was a bit different, which was, if there's a snake going to eat a bird and I remove the bird, did I collect good karma and bad karma? Why? Which is the same question. If someone sees an animal trapped in a spider web and they free them, are they collecting bad karma by removing the food of the spider? And the answer is, when you remove that animal, first of all, you're not thinking I'm getting rid of food. You're thinking I'm helping this animal. And as you do that, any bad karma the spider would collect by killing, you also prevent. So there you get two good karmas. First one is you save an animal's life, and the second one is you prevent another animal from creating a bad karma by killing. Does that make sense? So save the animals. Don't just let them die. It's a good thing. I hope that answers your question. Do you guys have other questions? I see someone typing. Do you want to just say it?
Okay, thank you. I just would like to ask your opinion about vegetarian.
About what?
Vegetarianism, to eat vegetarian food.
Uh,
I mean, not to eat,
okay, that's a
meat.
good question. A lot of people have doubts about this. There's nowhere does the Buddha say, don't eat meat, don't eat fish, don't eat eggs. The Buddha teaches, how does someone collect bad karma? Through intention. How does someone collect good karma? Through intention. So when someone goes, let's say, to the store, have you guys ever gone to the store and said, and you've seen a piece of chicken? Do you say, give me this chicken? You guys ever say that? I want this chicken? No, you say, give me this meat. Is there an intention to kill there? Is there an intention to deprive something of life? Is there even a perception of an animal there? No, you say, give me this meat. So there's no intention there. So how can that precept ever break? How can there be bad karma collected there? If you're going down the road and there's an animal lying dead on the floor, then did you create bad karma just by touching that animal, just by seeing that animal? No. So then bad karma is created by actually getting involved with killing. So if you were to go to the store and pick a living fish and say, I want this fish, and it's swimming in the tank, and then that person takes that fish and then kills it, then you're directly involved in that act. Based on what you said, that fish is being killed. So then there you collect bad karma, because you know that person is not going to just let that fish do something else. You know what you say will cause that fish to die. So when you go to the store and you buy meat or fish or whatever it is that's already dead, there's no intention to kill. And the person who's killed the animal doesn't ever say, oh, I know, for example, I know Mahendra's coming to the store today. I'm going to make sure this chicken is dead for him. Anyone doing that? No, that person has no idea who's coming to the store. That person has no idea this person is going to buy this chicken. And if you didn't buy it, someone else would buy it. So nowhere does the Buddha say you shouldn't not eat meat. The Buddha himself has eaten meat. Only if you're directly involved in that act, which is telling someone to kill or having something be killed for you, then the Buddha says, don't eat that. And if you actually tell someone to kill something for you, then you collect that bad karma. And if you kill it yourself. So, I mean, if you need to be vegetarian for health reasons, be vegetarian. If you want to eat meat, eat meat. No, that's not in any of the teachings. Does that make sense? Yes.
Thank you. I'm on the same opinion, but many times I heard from other Buddhists, mainly from Mahayana Buddhists, that they say that it's wrong. It's wrong. I'm a vegetarian. I don't eat meat. Just would like to understand this issue clearly. So they say that it's wrong to eat meat because indirectly we support the killing of animals.
So then my answer to that is, or what you can ask is, then you shouldn't walk on the street anymore because you indirectly support the killing of ants, right? So don't leave your house, put a mesh on your mouth so flies don't enter your mouth, stay in one place, and you won't kill any living beings, right? Why? Because by walking, you indirectly support killing ants and bugs, right? So that's what Jainism is about. So Jainism says the action is what's important, not the mind. So some like people who practice Jainism to an extreme, they have a cheesecloth on their mouth, like a net on their mouth, so flies don't go in. They stand in one spot for a long time, so when they walk, animals don't die. So they believe even if you walk down the street and you step on an ant, you collect bad karma. But the Buddha didn't teach that. The Buddha said the intention is the karma. The mind is the chief. The mind is the forefront of karma. So when you eat a piece of chicken, I understand you're vegetarian, but I'm saying if someone eats a piece of chicken, does that piece of chicken have consciousness? No, it's just you don't associate that with life anymore. It's a non-inanimate object. Then if I were to get angry and break this table or this chair, then I should also create bad karma of killing. But that doesn't happen. Why? There's no consciousness there. There's no life there. But if someone was to kill a living thing, then yes, he creates bad karma. But if someone has no intention whatsoever to do that, then he doesn't create bad karma. Does that make sense? Yes? You have another question?
Yes, thank you. My other problem with this, as I'm a vegetarian, I very consume milk products. And what I realized that I feel bad because I saw many videos, read articles, and so on how the milk production happening, and it's not nice with the cows. So what I realized that when I'm consuming milk products, I feel so sorry for the cows and feel bad. So how to deal with this? Or what is the right
that feeling is not so feeling bad for animals that are suffering is a good thing. But what matters is our intention when we do these things. So someone drinking milk is in no way has an intention to make those animals suffer. So by drinking milk, he doesn't have any involvement in that karma. And if you take that world perspective, you shouldn't be wearing clothes. All the cotton clothes we have comes from really slave labor. All the jewelry you wear comes from slave labor. So really none of the products you can use, you should be using with that logic, because a lot of humans suffer to make those products. Around even, you guys know Apple phones are assembled in China, right? There's nets around the factories in China to catch people who commit suicide. People who jump out the windows, there's nets on the window so that person doesn't fall and die. Because Apple has a decent working condition, but the working conditions are still so bad that people want to commit suicide inside the factory. So then you guys can't use your phone, your laptop. You shouldn't be wearing any clothes. You have to go back to wearing leaves and straw hats. Why? Because behind all the products we use, there's some kind of suffering. So human suffering is pretty bad too, if you look at it like that way. And then you can't even use the washroom, really. Why? When you use the washroom, what are you dirtying? Clean water. And that water is to a state where it's drinkable. Versus there are some countries where they don't have any drops of water. People die because they don't have any water. But we take it for granted and we use water just to flush our waste out. So that none of those acts, you guys wearing clothes, wearing jewelry, doesn't create bad karma, okay? None of those, we're not involved in that suffering. We're not causing that suffering. That's the way the world works. The reason that person is born there is because that person did that same thing to someone. There's an instance where there's a goat that lives, that's born, and this goat is taken to be butchered. And in that moment, that goat starts laughing and then starts crying. And the executioner or the butcher asks, "Why did you laugh? And then why did you cry?" And the goat says, "I laughed because I was 500 lives ago, I had the same job you had. I was a butcher. And I killed a goat as well. And for that bad karma, I was born 499 times as a goat, and I had my head cut off. And then the reason I laughed or smiled was because this is my last birth. I won't be born as a goat again." Then the butcher says, "Why did you cry then?" And then the goat says, "I cried because now you are going to have to experience the same suffering I went through." And then the butcher says, "Okay, I won't kill you." And then he tells all his other students, all his other apprentices, to protect the goat. But then lightning strikes and a piece of rock chips off and cuts off the goat's head. So no one in this world can prevent karma from bearing fruit. Whether the entire world stops drinking milk, that cow will suffer if it has the karma to suffer. You can't prevent that. We can't prevent that. But us drinking milk, eating meat, that doesn't have any involvement in that animal's suffering. Otherwise, you come back to the same. You can't wear clothes, you can't use jewelry, you can't use makeup, you can't use medicine. All those are tested on animals. Every vaccine, all those vaccines are tested on animals, on monkeys. All those surgeries you have performed on you are tested on animals first. So then behind all the things we have in our life, there's a lot of suffering that was involved. All the medicine, the screen creams we have, those are all tested on animals. Every day in the laboratory, maybe billions and billions of fruit flies die just to do experiments. How many animals die? How many lab rats die every single day? Then you can't use any of those things. And then we just have to live in a rock cave without touching anything and doing anything. So that worldview doesn't either, if someone practices that, then they have to practice that for everything. But if they don't, not to practice it, but us doing those things doesn't have any involvement to that animal or that person suffering. Okay, because we have no intention there. You're not using your iPhone saying, "May the person who made this suffer more and more." You're just using your phone, right? So don't forget, the intention is the karma. That's the Buddha's word. And we should always see what the Buddha taught, not this monk said this monk said that. So even don't take my word for it. You guys examine this yourself and see, does this make sense according to the Buddha's teachings? Understand? So I hope that answers your question. And then we'll take one more. Savisha, you had a question?
Namo Buddhaya Swaminathan Savasaraya. It was my kids chatting and asking one question earlier, but I thought I'll just say, I also used to have those ideas as that lady before, and I just wanted to say to me that Ahang Averu Homi meditation really helps Swaminathan, because in the end it says Kammasaka. So that meditation made me really understand. Yes, we spread loving kindness to all, but we are all beings of karma. So therefore, I had to accept that with that 𝗪𝗪 meditation. So that helped me. So I wanted to say that to that lady. And also, Swaminatha, then I thought to myself, then whenever I feel sorry for others, what do I do? So Dhammadana, Dhamma is the only way out of suffering, Swaminatha, is what I understood from the Kammasaka meditation. So I help promote Dhammadana. That's what I do when I feel bad for others, Swaminatha.
Okay, very good. So yeah, so everyone is the owner of their own karma. And sometimes you can't prevent karma from bearing fruit. Arhat Moggallana died by getting hit by thieves. No one, not even the Buddha could prevent that. So those thieves collected bad karma, yes, but just associating with Arhat Moggallana doesn't create bad karma for us. Okay, so those kinds of things don't create. It's always about the intention. Does it make sense?
Yes, thank you. But on the other side, I always experience so much suffering when I see animals suffering. Is it abnormal or or
No, you should feel bad if you see animals suffering. But I mean, are you buying your milk and watching a video of animals suffering?
different because I was thinking about it. Is it normal to feel so much pain if I see animals suffering?
No, that's normal. Like when you see someone suffering or something suffering and you want to help, that's karuna. That's called compassion. Seeing someone is suffering and wanting to help is a good quality. It's called compassion. So that's a quality we should develop. But practicing or coming to the view that by doing this, I'm practicing karuna is wrong view. So that's called mithya dushti. Meaning like if I stop doing this, then I'm practicing karuna or I'm helping or I'm creating bad karma if I do this. That counts as wrong view because that goes under clinging to wrong views and practices. Does it make sense? So if someone comes to the view, I'm not saying it doesn't matter if you're vegetarian or not. If someone has the view that if I eat this piece of meat, I create bad karma, that view is wrong view. Okay? There are people who are vegetarian, don't eat meat, but they don't have that view. They don't think if I eat meat, I create bad karma. They just don't eat meat. And they just like eating vegetables. That's completely fine. But if you have the view, yes?
Sorry. I choose to eat vegetarian food because it's healthy.
Yeah, that's completely fine. But the view is what's dangerous because that view, if we have that idea that this creates bad karma, then that view itself will lead us to a bad destination. Does that make sense? So,
Yeah.
So it's important. That's why a Buddha arises in the world to teach us this is right, this is wrong. So always compare with the text, with what the Buddha taught. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay, and then last question: by cleaning the cobwebs, do we collect bad karma? No, the Buddha taught is part of our, even in our precepts, if we see a cobweb, you should break it from the top to the bottom. So you start at the top and then break downwards. That way the spider has a chance to come down and leave. What the Buddha never said leaves cobwebs everywhere. To keep the residence clean, the Buddha taught the monks. So removing cobwebs is something you should do. Don't just live in a messy house thinking this is the spider's home too now. Otherwise, you guys are gonna have to start feeding the ants sugar and stuff. So keep your house clean, keep your room tidy, break the cobwebs, don't kill the spider, just remove it. Okay. So then that was the last question. So today we finished Satipaṭṭhāna, and I think we only have 3 more weeks of this program because after that there's a switching of the monks, or we're changing monasteries. So then you will, after those 3 weeks, I will try to teach you within those 3 weeks how to develop a good quality. And we talked about it very beginning, and we didn't really retouch on those ideas again for a long time. So I will remind that again. And then after that, you will have to request 𝗵𝗺 𝗀𝗵𝗂𝗵 to continue this program. And so Aingwas told me to remind you all. So today we collected a lot of merit by learning the Supreme Buddha's teachings. All the merit we collected, we share with all the devas. May all the devas rejoice in this merit. May they provide righteous protection to all these lay devotees and their families. May the devas have the good fortune to escape from this long journey of birth and death. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. We share all the merit we collected with our teacher 𝗵𝗺 𝗃𝗀𝗓𝗓, who taught us the Dhamma in this era, with 𝗵𝗺 𝗀𝗵𝗂𝗵𝗂𝗓, with all the monks of Mahamevnawa, all the monks training in the Buddha's dispensation. May all the monks rejoice in this merit and be able to realize the Four Noble Truths in this Gautam Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. We share all the merit we collected with all these lay devotees and their families and loved ones. May all these lay devotees be happy, healthy, and well. May you all have long lifespan. May you all be able to realize the Four Noble Truths and escape from this long journey of birth and death. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Everyone chant with me. Kayena vacha chittena pamadena maya katang acchayang kamame bhante bhuripanya tathagata. Kayena vacha chittena pamadena maya katang acchayang kamame dhamma sanditthika khalika. Kayena vacha chittena pamadena maya katang acchayang kamame sangha punyakhetang anuttara. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. I will chant a blessing for you all. Abhivādana sīlissa niccang vaddāpachāyino cattaro dhamma vaddanti āyuvanno sukham balang āyurārogya sampatti sagga sampatti mevaca ato nibbāna sampatti iminate samijjatu. May you all be happy, healthy, and well. 𝗪ᵣ Saranai, Namo Buddhaya.
Asura may we chant the forgiveness stanzas.
Okay.
Dear devotees, let's go to the flow and make worshipping asanas now. Okasa vandami bante maya katam punyang samina anumoditabbang.
Sadhu anumodami.
Samina katam punyang maihanda
Sadhu anumodate.
Sadhu sadhu anumodami. Okasa dwaratena katan sabbang acchayang kamatame bante.
Amami kamitabbang.
Okasa kamami bante. Dutiyampi okasa kamami bante. Tatiyampi okasa
May you
kamami
all be
bante.
happy and well. 𝗪ᵣ Saranai, Namo Buddhaya.